Politics is a downstream of culture. A very prophetic quote from Andrew Breitbart, the far-right propagandist out of all people. However, this is not a new idea and has been analyzed by various theorists throughout history. And the concepts of the culture industry and cultural hegemony are all very important to politics, which will be a topic of a future video. See, the political sphere is not separate from the cultural sphere, and there is no such thing as being apolitical, because everything is political in some way, shape, or form. That is, unless you define politics as solely confined to electoralism, to which even that is heavily influenced by things in the cultural sphere. Nowadays, the internet is more integral to cultural trends than ever. Take the election of Donald Trump and the rise of the online right in 2015 and 2016, for example. Many claim that Trump was memed into the White House, a narrative which is probably a bit overblown, but will nevertheless be analyzed critically in this video. Unless you have been living under a rock, you should know by now that memes have not only become a massive cultural phenomenon, but are also an increasingly potent force in online political discourse. However, most academics and political strategists overlook this rising cultural force, and even those who are in the know of the meme world are not exactly quite sure as to the degree of influence that memes actually have in influencing political attitudes. The influence of online discourse is not just confined to the online world. As we have seen throughout the past decade, memes that originated in fringe online communities like on 4chan and Reddit made their way into mainstream discourse. This included many far-right narratives, which were initially never taken seriously prior, but became mainstream after being packaged into memes and disseminated through online content. For instance, the term Red Pill, arguably the right's most infamous meme, went from being a fringe internet meme in Reddit and 4chan circles to becoming a staple in far-right discourse. Even though this meme ironically derived from a movie directed by two left-wing trans women, the idea of being red-pilled made the act of embracing conservatism, which was once regarded as an old man's ideology, seem like a cool political identity with an anti-establishment edge. This would arguably not be the case without memes and online content. Memes are not just important in North America, but in politics all over the world. The Winnie the Pooh meme, which mocked Chinese President Xi Jinping, was so huge in Hong Kong that the Chinese government decided to ban it. Vladimir Putin has also banned memes in the past that mocked his stance on homosexuality. It is hard to imagine that they would ban a meme if it was not having at least some sort of effect on mobilizing public opinion. Even NATO's Strategic Communications Defense Journal has once described memetic warfare as a form of information operations, a branch of warfare concerned with the dissimulation of information in a manner that can control the overall narrative or cause confusion. I know, crazy right? This video will feature ZeroBook's author and Professor Mike Watson, author of Can the Left Learn to Meme? And we will be analyzing the political potential of memes in today's digital society using the themes in Watson's book, as well as some ideas from other few key thinkers. We will go over why memes should be taken seriously as a political force, as well as whether the right have been more effective than the left when it comes to the so-called meme war. One reason why people overlook the cultural significance of memes is because they solely look at them as just what they are, while ignoring how they spread and their cultural impact. I would like to show a short clip from this great video from the channel Lemon on why memes are so powerful psychologically.
The reason memes exist, spread, and influence our culture is that we enjoy them on a psychological level. Memes are exceptionally appealing to us because of how our brains function. Schemas, heuristics, and chunking are all major psychological concepts dictating that human thought is heavily operated upon the representation of raw information through small, manageable pieces. We understand concepts better by packaging them into familiar bits. Our brains do this automatically in order to efficiently store information. Memes are socially generated concepts that reflect our psychological methods for information processing. Through a meme, it is possible to compress a complex issue, narrative, or emotion into a single image or phrase. Simply put, a meme is the fastest way to put an idea in someone's head.
I think that's a quite good explanation of the psychological appeal of memes. However, many people may intuitively know why memes are popular, but the question is why are they powerful politically? And for what purpose? Politically charged memes tend to sell a product, and that product is ideology. Ideology does not have to be specific, and it is not necessarily a good or bad thing. Ideology is everywhere, and even the most apolitical people you know are influenced by some form of ideology. The people that are least aware that their views are influenced by ideology are usually the ones who are actually most influenced by it. Ideology is not necessarily a strict doctrine. It is more or less a system of beliefs and ideals which unconsciously influence a person's political and social views. For most people, this ideology is neoliberal capitalism, as it is the most pervasive in the mainstream media, political discourse, and even in the culture entertainment industry. Neoliberalism was once considered to be a very right-wing ideology, but now it has become so mainstream that it is considered the centrist position, making those on the right misconstrue it for the left. Neoliberal ideology is what the populist left aims to combat in its online content. Memes are becoming one of the most overlooked battlefields of ideological warfare. The political impact of memes may seem negligible at first, but this is only when looking at immediate political outcomes. Shifts in ideology are gradual and very difficult to quantify. People on the left underestimate how long it will take to revise decades of Cold War propaganda that people have been fed for a very long time. And memes and online content are just a few of the many ways in which these narratives can be combated. Plus, the communicative potential of memes is even greater in a time in which literacy is at its lowest. It is safe to say that most people are reading less and less. Not just books, but even news articles are too long. Millennials and especially Generation Z grew up watching TV, playing video games, and using social media every day instead of reading books. And now many kids are getting smartphones as early as age 8. This, along with the evolution and proliferation of visual-based media, have led to what Mark Fisher calls in capitalist realism a post-literate society. In this society, visuals are far more important than textual content, especially in politics. This has led to a new kind of literacy, in which Zoomers and Millennials can absorb far more information in a short amount of time, but are simultaneously left with an attention span that can't even read an entire article. Those who want to combat neoliberal narratives should adapt to the conditions of current society and meet people to where they are, rather than being elitist and yelling at them to read theory or call groups of people that have been subsumed into right-wing ideology as deplorables. This will get the left nowhere. Reading theory is good, and I like to incorporate the useful parts of the theory I read into my videos. But at the end of the day, most people aren't and won't be reading theory, or won't even read at all, for that matter. Now, where do memes fit into all of this? Memes are extremely effective modes of microcommunication that can be redistributed and consumed at an astronomical rate. Memes are not usually effective unless they are original or authentic. Forced memes never work.
But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
Since memes seemingly have so much political potential, how come the right have adapted to this cultural phenomenon more effectively than the left? Why is that? And is it even true?
Final round. Fight.
Now, let's assume that the narrative that the right makes better memes than the left is true. Why would this be the case? Well, for one, right-wing memes are often more simple and easy to understand, which goes a long way. However, in these right-wing memes, there is usually a little ounce of truth, and a ton of bullshit. But that little ounce of truth is enough for it to have a lot of staying power. Narratives and conspiracy theories alike have to have a little bit of truth in order for them to be convincing at all. There are even memes that make fun of how leftist memes are often so hard to understand due to their insular language. Of course, this is not true for all leftist memes, and we will highlight some examples of great ones later on in the video, but you tend to find this tendency in a lot of leftist circles, especially on Reddit and Twitter. However, the idea that the right is somehow better at memeing than the left is not a narrative that should be blindly accepted without critically analyzing. When you consider a variety of factors, the right had practically all the odds in their favor. For starters, right-wing memes don't actually target the left, even if that's what they think they are doing. Most of the time, they are really just attacking liberals, sometimes neoliberals, or other kinds of liberals who just want a virtue signal over social issues, which make very easy targets and are also hated by the socialist left. These are the same liberals that tried to cancel Bernie Sanders just because Joe Rogan endorsed him, who liberals also despise even though that Rogan is a lot more left-leaning than he is right-wing. The absolute cringeworthiness of status quo liberals is what gave us the NPC meme, which I would argue is probably one of the best memes that came out of the right. NPC stands for non-player character, which is the type of automated characters in video games that always do the same thing and stay on script all the time. The point of this is to mock media personalities and politicians who just say the same things over and over robotically in a manner where you can clearly tell that they are just paid there to sell a narrative. This more so attacks partisan liberals than anybody else, who robotically defend the status quo and are out of touch with the rest of humanity. Most people intuitively dislike these types of personalities, which is why many apolitical people can get behind this meme, not just right-wingers. Another overlooked reason as to why it is harder for the left to meme than the right is that it is naturally a lot harder to convey leftist ideas as opposed to right-wing ideas. For every left-wing meme or left-wing idea in general that is presented, you need to debunk 100 right-wing lies before it can even be accepted. What is arguably the biggest advantage for the right when it comes to the meme war and political discourse in general is that right-wing ideas are already the norm. Even though right-wingers want to believe that radical far-left Marxist postmodern social justice warriors have taken over, in reality neoliberalism has been and still is the dominant ideology, which is not far off from libertarianism, at least economically. While right-wingers will want to focus on the social justice aspect, which is embraced by neoliberalism but not actually put into practice, people are still taught that free markets are good and that big government is bad. Healthcare is unrealistic. Socialism never works. We need a big police force to fight crime. These are all political narratives that are still mainstream and embraced by the neoliberals. Right-wing ideology is a lot easier to accept because people have been already nurtured to accept a lot of their narratives. In fact, there's a great left-wing meme that just perfectly illustrates how so many of quasi-socialist ideas are actually very popular, but as soon as people find out that they are merely associated with socialism, they are suddenly not. And that just tells you everything you need to know about ideology. So, all things considered, was the right actually that good at memes? While the right was undeniably more successful when it comes to political outcomes, I think the degree to which they are actually better at making memes than the left is very much exaggerated when considering all the odds in their favor. In addition to all of these factors, unlike the left, the right, who always has more money at their disposal and whose ideas don't actually threaten the capitalist elite, usually have a candidate to champion in electoral politics. In politics, the left tends to find itself in a position where they have to back the lesser of two evils, and vote for a milquetoast center-right neoliberal candidate like Obama, Al Gore, John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, and now Joe Biden, over a marginally worse Republican. From the perspective of an apolitical outsider or an uninformed voter, this makes the left look very boring, and with the rise of Trump in 2016, who had a very smart marketing team and a bombastic personality and a very strong psychological appeal, the left was in an even more weak position in general, and especially when it comes to meme making. It is not exactly easy to make memes for unlikable candidates like Hillary or Biden, who the left themselves don't even like, and often the memes they do make about these candidates are usually negative. Whereas for the right, there is actually a lot of passion behind their candidate and a genuine drive to advance Donald Trump into the mainstream, by any means necessary. Given Trump's loss to Biden, the impact of right-wing memes this time around in 2020 will probably be overlooked. While there is little talk of an alt-right meme campaign to match that of 2016, the bizarre QAnon conspiracy movement revolving around implicit anti-Semitism and claims of abuse rings run by prominent Democrats have gone viral on YouTube and on memes through Instagram and Facebook. where QAnon accounts were closed due to disinformation weeks before the election. This didn't stop Marie Taylor Greene, a Republican businesswoman, from winning a seat in Georgia's 14th congressional district, an event that was undoubtedly helped by the virality of the QAnon movement. The QAnon movement is even more decentered than the alt-right, and seems to have spawned from a singular 4chan post in 2017. The original post, written by a shadowy 4chan user who claimed to be a government agent, deliberately spread around the internet via Reddit and YouTube by a group of 3 individuals, with many meme accounts acting as hubs. These factors highlight how difficult it is to actually measure how effective memes are. But we still cannot rule out the possibility that viral QAnon messages did have a big impact. While QAnon is more of a conspiracy than a meme in the traditional sense, as there is nothing really funny about it, it essentially began as a meme that was not taken that seriously initially, and it had a memetic quality in that it was virally distributed throughout the internet in the form of images, short YouTube clips, and shitposts. The QAnon conspiracy was not just popular among 4chan dwellers. Some studies actually found that the conspiracy was vastly popular among mothers and grandmothers who spread the QAnon memes throughout Facebook. Now, in this 2020 election, the left still suffers from the same disadvantages that it usually does. They are still in a position where they have to back a candidate that they don't like, and centrist neoliberals, well, they can't exactly meme at all. That being said, Biden has been a far more easily memeable character than Hillary Clinton has been. I mean, the memes for Joe Biden practically write themselves, but somehow Biden is able to come across as a lot more likable than Hillary has. While most of the time, Biden memes involve people laughing at Biden rather than laughing with him, either way, the memes as well as Biden's overall personality tend to make a Biden candidacy be a little bit easier to swallow than a Hillary one. Now, stepping aside from electoral politics into the sphere of everyday life, the job of the populist left should be to use memes and other forms of cultural production to expose the absurdities of capitalism and the inherent contradictions of the ideology we are told. Cracks in the matrix, if you want to call it that. But it is important to note that memes cannot just be a bald transfer of facts. They have to be humorous and shareable. The problem with many left memes is that they still suffer from this fact obsession syndrome. Many left-wing memes don't even seem to be jokes, but rather a condensed set of facts. Here are some examples of what I consider to be successful leftist memes. As you can see with these memes, especially the Bernie Sanders ones, are successful because they are funny and the message is implied rather than overt. It is letting the viewer place it all together rather than telling them what to think. Plus, they are more accessible and distributable, which is a very important factor when it comes to the success of memes. Memes need to be able to be distributed and remade infinitely. This brings us to another reason as to why left-wing memes have not been as popular as right-wing memes, which is that rational appeals don't always work, and that the way in which messages are framed and aestheticized is often more important. These factors also play into why the right tends to control political discourse in general. The linguist George Lakoff has highlighted the importance of framing the conversation and how the right tends to control discourse in his book Don't Think About an Elephant. And controlling the frames in which ideas are presented ultimately decides who controls discourse. Facts do matter, but the ways in which they are framed and the aesthetics in which they are presented with are arguably more important, especially in this day and age. The problems of the world are often far too complex to explain within a few words, but great memes that include little ounces of truth can be powerful enough to dramatically shift someone's thinking over time in subtle ways. After all, what we consume is what makes up our very thoughts, which dictate our thinking, our opinions, and our choices, whether we're aware of it or not. Little bits of information can subtly affect us on a molecular scale in ways that we aren't aware of. Political factions of all sides like to claim that they're the ones who have the truth. Truth is claimed by Marxists, social democrats, neoliberals, libertarians, and far-right Trump supporters. And the truths or narratives that dominate political discourse are not necessarily the ones that are the most true. The supposed marketplace of ideas is not a meritocracy. It is a market. And markets are not meritocratic. In the same way that effective marketing is often more important to the success of a product than the actual contents of it, whether or not a political narrative being sold is based on facts or actually benefits the material conditions of the political consumer are not the only factors that determine whether they adopt that ideology or political position. People intuitively know that this applies to selling products or getting a job, but for some reason they just won't accept that this applies to political ideas. The left seems to assume that their ideas will become successful by the virtue that they benefit the 99%. The famous saying from Canadian media theorist Marshall McLuhan that the medium is the message is more relevant than it has ever been. The left must learn to adapt to our fast-paced digital society and spread itself throughout every platform on the internet. On YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Yes, people still use Facebook, unfortunately. But the spread of class-conscious memes, of fun but educational videos, of podcasts, introspective music, abstract art, socialist guest appearances on large-scale podcasts like Joe Rogan are all very integral factors into the spread of leftist ideas. And the ideology that captivates the most people wins. Socialist thought is arguably not as popular as it could be because most people don't even bother to learn about it in the first place. They just hear narratives and then go with it and don't end up checking it out. But thanks to people like Bernie Sanders who popularized the term socialism, people are actually taking the time to actually look up the history of it and what it actually means and the historical complexities behind it. But using overly complex words that only make sense within niche leftist theory echo chambers is not going to bring any new people to leftism. It will just intimidate people and give a product for people who are already in that echo chamber to consume. It is absolutely crucial that the left must avoid being confined to insular echo chambers because many good leftist memes and leftist contents didn't become as successful as they could have been because they never left the left. Even though many of the popular Trump memes originated in the subreddit r/thedonald, they did not stay in r/thedonald. They spread elsewhere, dispersed everywhere, and found their way into mainstream discourse. This is what the left should be seeking to do with their content, is spread their content and ideas outside of already existing leftist circles. If you are not trying to reach new audiences and introduce more new people to ideas, you are not educating new people. You are just giving people a product to consume. But to have ideas spread beyond leftist circles, the left must produce content with the conditions of our virtual platformized world in mind. Fractal leftism with cool, stimulating content that seduces people's attention away from the banality of everyday life and capitalism and counters the narratives of capitalist ideology is very important to the movement. To an armchair academic or an old-school out-of-touch Marxist, this might just sound like a load of crap. But the idea that cultural production can transform politics was already argued by thinkers like Herbert Marcuse and Theodor Adorno, who particularly believed that in an irrational society, radical art and the irrational joy and creative desire that it brings to people was one of the few but desperate ways in which to wake people up from the irrationalities of capitalism, which are often perceived as natural. If used effectively, the irrational but potent force of memes could perhaps help expose the irrationality of neoliberal ideology and the absurdity of everyday life under capitalism. In his aesthetic theory work, Adorno called this the shudder that is able to jilt the viewer out of the rigid structures of modern industrialized society. Watson reanalyzes this concept in his Millennial Adorno essay. Now think about it for a second. You can see how the statement may also apply to memes, regardless if you want to call memes art or not. They can have the effect of exposing inherent lies in the capitalist system in a simple but humorous, lighthearted way. Watson's analysis not only applies to memes, but to artistic and creative production in general. It is also important to mention that we are not advocating for the left to just merely copy the right. As Watson argues, the left should not predicate on nihilistic fatalism like the right wing does. Neither should they engage in a pointless proliferation of shitposts with no meaning that people can get from them. See, unlike the right, the left does not have to make up flat-out lies in order to make its ideas sound appealing. Rather, it just has to debunk right-wing ideas and counter the McCarthy propaganda myths that people were fed their whole lives. And once people begin to doubt these narratives, they start to doubt more, and then start looking into history themselves. In this day and age, memes are just one of the many ways in which to popularize ideas, or at least make people warmer to them. I've seen a lot of cases of people who are radicalized in Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders dank meme groups, which just tells you a lot. It is impossible to measure the outcomes of memes in politics, and you might not see direct political outcomes. You probably actually won't. It's all very subtle. It can go a long way. People get introduced to ideas in various ways, and once they do so, it can often encourage them to take up action in real life. This begs the question, what even is effective praxis in the current postmodern digital world? This is a question that will be analyzed in our sequel video coming out next week, in which we will critique some of the traditional rationalist assumptions of contemporary and past social movements, and propose some new suggestions that draw upon Mark Fisher's concept of acid communism. But for now, here's a quick clip of Mike Watson describing one of the main arguments from his book, Can the Left Learn to Meme? I also interviewed him on my podcast, One Dime Radio. Links in the description and on the screen.
While things like memes and YouTube may seem eons away from Adorno's preference for an absurdist high art or experimental orchestral music, as I explained in Can the Left Learn to Meme, there is something about millennial and Zoomer culture that in its countering of an absurdist national society through absurd memes is very similar to Adorno's stated intentions. It is possible to utilize the vast resources of the internet for creativity that's conducive to reflection and to thinking through the problems we need to digest in order to be effective as the left. Slow memeing, the slow meme, are terms I coined and which I'll unpack in a future book, and which aim at taking back the internet and using it for creative reflection and dialogue that can create a class consciousness.
Ayo, I just gotta say, these videos take a lot of time, and I mean a lot. To give you an idea as to just how much work went into this video, about only 1 minute of what you see can take up to 3 hours of work alone, depending on the scene. Right now I essentially make zero money from YouTube, so if you want to help keep this channel alive, you can support me on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will also get access to exclusive content. Big thanks to the patrons who have supported me thus far.